So I'd like to talk to you about a distinction that's important, a distinction between what is separation and what is divorce. So we're talking about two kinds of families. They're the kind of families where people get married, they actually go through the formal legal ceremony to get married. And then, of course, you have other people who basically live together as a family in a spousal type relationship. But then, of course, they don't actually do the formal getting married thing. Now, the distinction is that when people go through a separation and divorce, really what they are mostly talking about, or what tends to be the most important to them, is how they are going to divide their assets, how they are going to, what's the parenting plan going to look like for their children if they have them, and of course, what is the support obligation, if anything. So when people go through a separation and divorce, they often talk about getting a divorce, but really, when we talk about getting a divorce itself can only happen to people that A, have first of all been formally married to each other, and then also it is not anything but an order of the court. It is actually a court order. So for example, where I live, you can't even agree to get divorced. You can't do it by consent. Someone can make an application for it, but a judge actually has to pronounce somebody being divorced. So for example, if you live in a no-fault jurisdiction, so I'm in Canada, for example, and Canada and a number of the United States have no-fault jurisdictions. And what that means is that, you can get divorced, that is no longer be legally married to somebody, because the only reason is that you're not together anymore, that you've lived separate and apart for a year or more. There's other grounds for divorce, such as adultery or mental and physical cruelty. And there are many jurisdictions out there that still require that kind of an allegation, as opposed to no fault, as in we're getting divorced because we're no longer together. And the thing is that getting that divorce order, well, all it really does for you is it really just allows you to marry somebody else eventually, if that's what you want to do. And in some jurisdictions, if you don't have a legally binding separation agreement, that can be an issue, because if you're not divorced, it's possible that your ex-spouse could still have an interest in your property, for example. When people are talking about going through the separation process, again, circling back around, really what we're talking about is the document or the agreement or court order that says, well, how are you parenting your children? Who's spending time with them? And what's the schedule? And who's making the decisions? What's the child support, if there's any? How are you sharing other special expenses with, for the children? Also, how have you divided your assets, or how are they to be divided? And finally, whether or not there is any spousal support flowing from one party to the other. So going back to that is, so some people, like me, for example, I'm separated, and as I record this, and I have a formal, legally binding, final separation agreement. It's all done. However, neither of us has gone so far as to make the application to court to get divorced. Now, in my jurisdiction as well, even though you have to make a court application, you don't always have to stand in front of a judge to get that. People often do it by way of desk order, which means that you just file documents with the court asking for that divorce, and then a judge ultimately signs off on it. People often don't understand that distinction between getting a separation and getting divorced. Oh, hey, it's me. Interrupting a little bit, because I want videos like this to reach more people. So if you are enjoying what you see, if you're finding it helpful, please hit the subscribe button, which is somewhere up there. And also tell me, what was the biggest takeaway you had with respect to this video? Leave it in the comments below, and I will answer every comment, every question, because that's what I do. I'm thinking of a client that I represented at one point, and, he was unhappily married, and his wife took their child and returned to the Ukraine, said, that's it, it's over, I'm done, I don't want anything to do with you anymore, I'm getting a divorce, and off she went to the Ukraine. Now, my client loved his daughter very much, although he wasn't, supported the mother taking the daughter with her to the Ukraine. He knew he wasn't stopping the mother, and also also didn't want to, because the mother was the primary caregiver for the daughter, he didn't want to, cause any issue between the mom and daughter. So he let her go, didn't oppose it. Anyway, so because he loved his daughter so much, so he took a number of trips back to the Ukraine to see his daughter. Now, this whole time, because his wife had left, because she said she was getting a divorce, because she got him to send her some money so that she could make the divorce application, he had totally understood and believed that he was divorced, and his life went on. And so over 3 years after him and his wife had separated and he believed he was divorced, which he wasn't, they also didn't have a legally binding separation agreement of any sort. Well, his wife found out that he had gotten on with his life and he purchased a property here in Canada. Now, at that particular time, the property values went whoosh, like really, really increased, super jumped. And so she came back from the Ukraine and moved back into his house. Now, they slept in separate rooms. They didn't reconcile. They even slept on different floors. They each had their own rooms. However, he was hoping that they could have the kind of family where mom and dad got along, okay enough so that they could both live with their daughter, who they both love very much, and they could be a family in that way. Now, let's blast back to one of the times he visited in the Ukraine. So although he got his own accommodation and all of that, the wife, this is after she found out that he bought this property, was increasing in value daily at the time. And so his wife basically suggested that perhaps they should try again, and maybe they could take a romantic holiday with one another while he was in the Ukraine. And so so off they go on this romantic holiday. It was, he says, an unmitigated disaster. It didn't last for more than a couple of days. It was a terrible idea. However, she managed to get a bunch of photographs. They're at the beach, they're being in this loving embrace, and she got all these photographs of them being together. And so after she came back to Canada, over 3 years after she left, she alleged that, hey, wait, we never were separated. I went back to the Ukraine to deal with a health problem. That's it. And we were actually never apart. And look, here are the pictures to prove that we're still together. The thing is that when she sued him here in Canada for a division of his property, an interest in his house, he was very surprised that she would be able to do that. See, the thing is that she had not obtained a divorce in the Ukraine as he thought that she had done. And also, when she sued him for divorce and dividing his assets, that is going after his house here in Canada, he was very surprised to find out A, that he wasn't divorced, and B, that she could possibly have an interest in his property. And the problem was for him is that she had some evidence that supposedly showed that they didn't break up. As I record this case is not concluded yet, and I'm really sure my client's case is going to prevail. However, he's going to win. However, the word of warning for you, if you are married to somebody and separated and you have any assets to think about, what you want to do is make sure that you get that legally binding final separation agreement so that at least the property issues are dealt with, the asset issues are dealt with. So, or even support issues are dealt with, particularly if you'd be the one would be required to pay support. And remembering also that as long as you have that legally binding separation agreement, that divorce is not mandatory at all. For some people, they never bother getting divorced because it's not important to them, whereas for others, it is. So if you are going through a separation and divorce, and even if you're not married, think about this distinction and think about ensuring how you are going to close off or end your legal obligations to your spouse, whether you're married to that person or not. Again, reaching an agreement that deals with 3 things. What are those 3 things? They are the parenting plan for your kids, dividing your assets, and sorting out the support obligation or entitlement, if any. So this is Val, and I am here for you. And if you have any questions, reach out. Much love. If you found this video helpful, and I hope you did, give it a thumbs up, because if you do that, then this video will be able to reach more people. And as well, if you want to stay in closer touch with me, please ring the little bell icon so that you can subscribe to this channel. This is Val. Much love.